guys, welcome back to the KK2 Complete Guide. I'm going to start in on quads since that seems to be what most people are going to be flying with the KK2, that and tricopters, which I'll come to a bit later. But for starters, the little Turnigy integrated PCB micro quad. You can buy this guy for around $100 in a box, comes just like this. All you need to do is add a receiver, which I've done. This is the orange 4-channel micro receiver that takes standard servo plugs. It's a cool little thing for something like this. I've installed that. I've installed the props out of the box. That's really all you have to do to put this guy together. Now the other thing I had to do was go and update the firmware. This guy arrived with version 1.2 on it, and I have updated it to version 1.6. Having updated the firmware, there's a few things that we have to do before we can fly this guy, a few things we have to set up. So I'm gonna go through and show you that stuff right now. Once you've updated the firmware on the board, it's gonna reset everything. So the board's gonna need to be told, you're gonna have to recalibrate your accelerometers, you have to tell it what type of copter you've got, and then we'll have to go in and make any adjustments for stability we have to go back and do. So if we go in here to the menu, and we scroll all the way down to the bottom, what we want to do first here, if I go to show motor layout, you can see currently this board is set up for a quad plus configuration. We want to fly it as a quad X, so we're going to go back down here to load motor layout, and we're going to scroll through the available layouts until you get to quadricopter X mode and hit enter. It's going to ask if you're sure, you're going to tell it yes, and the next thing it'll do is default to the display showing you how your props should be laid out as they are there and as they are on the screen. That's how you do it. So you can go through and hit next on each of these screens, and it will give you a detailed little layout that shows you exactly where each prop should be rotating and everything else. So when you're done with that, hit back until you get to the main screen. Now from here, the next thing we want to do is calibrate the accelerometers on the board. Now you want to make sure that the copter is level when you do this. You can check it with a spirit level, or if you have a table or a workshop that you know is particularly level, set it on that. And we're going to go through here. Accelerometer calibration, and hit enter. It says basically put the thing on a level surface, step back. It'll count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it'll calibrate. And once it's done that, now that's what it uses as its basis for level. This is why you have to make sure the copter is level. When you do this, that's what it decides is level. So if you do it on a crooked surface, then when you hit self-level, your copter is going to tilt over. So calibration succeeded, and you're back to the square one here. Now, in the case of this particular copter, that's all we need to do. We just need to set it for, X configuration and calibrate the accelerometers, and then it's pretty much ready to fly. Now this thing is 4-channel only on the receiver, so we've left the self-level activation to stick mode, which I'll show you in just a second, because it's really time to test fly this thing. So one more quick thing that you want to check, obviously before you fly the copter, is that all of the functions on your radio are corresponding correctly to the functions on the KK. Now it has a built-in function called receiver test that we use to look at what it's seeing from the radio. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do a little trimming, and then I'll show you how that works. So Stuart, if you come around here, I'll show you right here on the copter. Hello. So, got my orange radio here, trusty little guy, set up for micro quad. Now, I'm going to be using this same radio for all of the quads that I'm flying, since it has a 10 model memory. We'll just get them all in here. So you're going to go ahead on the copter itself, go to menu, and the second option down here is receiver test, and hit enter. And you see some numbers there, aileron, elevator, throttle, and rudder, with some numbers following them. Now, there's two things we're going to do here. If I move the stick on the radio, you should be right on aileron, left on aileron, so those are correct. And then back should be toward me, elevator back, and elevator forward, those are correct. Throttle, you go ahead and check. You're not armed, so it's safe to do that. So that's full throttle, no throttle. And then rudder left, rudder right. So as you can see, all of those are correct. Now it says no signal on aux, and that's because I have left this in stick mode, which I'll show you again in just a second. So we now know that our receiver is correct. The other thing you want to do is make sure you can get all of those numbers to zeros. So you want to go through and trim as much as you can to get those numbers to zero out. That way, now you know that the board is seeing dead flat when you go to take off. And one other thing that I'll show you real quick, since this is in stick mode and if we want to fly in self-level, basically you hold full right aileron as you arm the copter, and that'll arm you into self level. And if you arm with the stick neutral, then it arms in regulars or sport mode. So that's about it. Let's see if it flies. Yay! So that's not in self level, but as you can see, a nice little flyer right off the bat, blowing everything off my table. So there you go. That's about as easy as that can be. Those are completely stock KK settings. I am going to play with the self level a little, and I am going to play with the settings a little and get it a little bit more dialed, and I'll show you what I did when we come back. So very cool.
You got Pt.3? Higher?
Twitchy little guy.
Fly out a shot.
So we are back in the shop. Spent the evening last night putting together the SK450, which is going to get its own video very shortly. But for now, we are back to this guy. Check it out. So PID tuning can be extraordinarily complicated, as exposed by our friendly little diagram right here. There's a whole lot of math here you don't need to know that the KK board is doing to determine where in the universe the copter is at any given time. What a proportional integral derivative control loop really does is basically correct for errors. In this case, the error is anything other than where you've asked the copter to be, especially in self-level mode. For instance, if this is in self-level mode, it wants to be here. If it's here, it knows that's wrong, and it uses all of these various numbers to come back to here without crashing. So that's really what this is all about, is tuning this thing so that the responses are quick and accurate without causing it to either overshoot or spin out of control and crash. That's what we're doing. So, to do that on the copter, I use a method that a number of folks use online. I happen to like it quite a bit as well, where essentially you start by setting your P value first. So we're going to set our I value to 0, and we're going to tune from there by first increasing the P value slowly and doing test hops until the copter starts to oscillate. I'll show you what that looks like. And then we back off that P value. And then we do the same thing with I. We keep increasing the I until when it hovers, it has a slow static oscillation, and we tune that back out. So for starters, we're gonna go to the PI editor. And again, ailerons and stuff are linked. We're gonna go down here, and we're gonna 0 our I gain. We're gonna set it to nothing. Right now we're working only in pitch and roll. We're leaving y'all alone. So we're gonna go and we're gonna set that to nothing. And then we're gonna go, our P limit's gonna stay at the factory default of 100. We're gonna go with a P gain, and we start with a pretty small number. This is a pretty small copter, so I'm gonna start with 40, purely as a generic guess. Now this thing's not gonna flop around or do anything incredibly stupid no matter what you do. It's just gonna kind of fly in a poor manner. So right now there's no I, and our P is set at 40. We'll take off, do a little hop. Now they're pretty hard to control with no I because they have no desire to stay in one place whatsoever. But as you can see, that's still pretty stable. If I jerk the controls around, there's no oscillation. So set it down, and we'll add some more P. Now I happen to know that this number can go quite a bit higher, so in the interest of saving some time, I started at about 40, increase about 10 each time and keep doing some hops. I'm gonna jack this up to about 110 so I can show you guys just what it looks like when it's got that oscillation in it. So here we go. 110. This ought to be amusing. Now when we take off, you can see it's already wobbling coming off the table. Little controlled movements. Make it wiggle around and make funny noises. You can hear it, you can see it. I jerk the control, oh, it wiggles around like that. That's too much P. I go back in, and we're gonna dial this back. Now I happen to know from doing this earlier that around 75 is a pretty happy number on this copter. So, go to 75, you take off. You can see, it's still pretty stable. There's a tiny bit of oscillation if I jerk it around too fast. quite a bit better. Quite a bit. Okay. So that basically is how you get your P number. You start going higher and higher until you get that wicked little oscillation on the control, and you dial that back until that goes away. There we are. Now, the process for determining I is very much the same thing. You're gonna start by punching in a value, and you'll keep increasing that value by 5 or 10, just like you did on the P value, until when you take off and hover, when you recover from a motion, the copter has a slow oscillation. So instead of that real fast vibration we saw with the P, the I tends to induce kind of a wandering sensation. And we're gonna basically keep tuning it until when you make a control input in acrobatic mode, it stays there after you let go of the control. So you don't want it to oscillate or try to find its way back. You want it to respond to and remain in the configuration that you put it. So we're gonna start with a number about 20 and give it a quick hop. Now, as you can see already, I'm not needing to control the copter as hard to keep it from flying around. That's because it's wanting to hold its inputs. It's actually pretty good right there on 20. There's no low speed oscillation happening. Now what I'll do is crank that value way up. 20 seems about right. What I'm going to do is crank that way up to a value that's probably wrong, and I'll see if I can show you what I mean by low speed oscillation. So there, now the I gain is at 70. I'm not really doing that. It's wandering around, hunting quite a bit on its own. And that is an example. Whoa! Too much of my right. So, we're gonna go back down a bit. Let's call it 35. See where that gets us. So that's hands off. That's pretty good. Doesn't really want to wander or oscillate too much. If you disturb the value, it should want to stay, and it does, and not snap back to level. So that is pretty good. So that's pretty good for the basic tuning on the PID loop. And the other thing you'll want to then do is go in and check the auto level settings. In the case of this copter, it's on the stick and it's not a big deal. Pretty much when you go into self level, whatever your P value is for the regular copter, a pretty similar value tends to be about right for the self level setting. So in this case, we're at 75, and so I'm going to go down to self level, and I'm going to set that at about 70. And I'm going to set the limit at about 20, about half of the value we're using. Actually, that's not right, because we're using 100, so we're going to set the P limit at about 50. And that should give us decent self level. Let's find out. In this case, when you're not using a switch, hold your aileron stick far right as you arm, and that turns on your self level setting. Little vibration on takeoff, so we could tune that P down a little. You can see when I flick the stick like that, it's got that same oscillation that we were tuning out before. So that is an indication you want to turn the P gain down a bit on your self level setting. About 10 at the times, we were at 70. See what 60 does for us. Quite a bit better already. Tiny bit of that oscillation still. The real test would be to come fly it in some wind outside and see how much it shakes around when we do that. But for now, I'm pretty happy with that. Gotcha. That's pretty good. You can see, even if I disturb it quite a bit, I can let go, and it keeps right on going. So, it's a happy little copter. There you have it. So that's pretty much the process. Basically, you're increasing a number until it vibrates and oscillates in one way, tuning that down a little and doing the same for the other values. So you do that for P, you do that for I, then you do that for your self level as we just did, and you end up with a pretty well flying little copter. That's it.